My ethos is less oriented towards sport too terribly much, even though I was really pushing sport as the leader of Fasted Female for all those years.
Sure.
Girls in sports. And it's incredible, and it's totally linked to leadership, confidence, resilience, coachability, teamwork, amazing skills that we all want our daughters to have more female leadership, make the world a better place.
What is it that people are most interested in from you in particular? What do you think, what are people coming to you for and they're saying, I need more of this?
I am getting a lot of audiences looking for resilience, being willing to try things and experiment, because I feel like my whole life is so iterative. Who do you know who's like, oh, I've got it all figured out now? Yeah. I mean, in everyone's career, they're on like, what's the next thing for me? Especially in your line of work, you must really see, we're not going to stop evolving ever. So the skill that I want the kids to have is to like tune to themselves, try things, and if they could have those two skills.
Chandra, welcome. Glad to have you. Glad you could make it to come see us. So excited to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Well, if people don't know, and of course we just said it in the intro, but you are an Olympic athlete from Canada, and we're proud of you and what you've accomplished in Canada. So, and maybe just give us, you probably have like an elevator speech of who you are and what you do and how you got here. But what's your elevator speech for who you are?
I am a music-loving mountain girl from Canmore in my core. I have a lot of drive from my core values, which if you hung out with me more, you would really feel health, learning, and kids. I don't know if kids is a core value, but I love kids so much. So it's a core value now. And I had these amazing experiences, cross-country ski racing all over the world. It was so formative. I had these journeys, outer physical, but inner mental and emotional, rising through adversity and learning a lot about resilience from the setbacks I had, from mental health challenges I had. And today I'm just a vibe. I'm an energy. I'm just here to love as much as possible.
Yeah. Do you still live in Canmore?
I live in Canmore, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Year round. When we were talking off camera, when I was competing in Canmore all the time, I would always get beat by people who live there.
Oh, really?
Because, if you take any sport seriously enough, you move close to the venue, right? Like, it only makes sense.
Yeah, home course advantage.
Yeah, like if you were into surfing, you don't live in Saskatchewan. It only makes sense, right?
No kidding. Yeah. We should have been there the whole time. Just perfecting those bank turns in your endurance racing. So cool.
Yeah, my racing was uphill climbs. That's all we ever did. So
I appreciate that. So you like to suffer. Would you say that's the case?
I don't know. I guess, as an athlete, you start to learn that liking something isn't founded on your enjoyment of it. Like, it isn't because I eat cake because it tastes good, right? But I think we do punishing things because we like it, but not because it's necessarily, it's enjoyable, but not at the same level as cake.
I see what you mean.
That's what I'm saying.
Have you heard that type 2 fun label for that kind of thing? It's fun after, when you're done and you did it and you can go, have a shower and have a meal.
Interesting.
It's called type 2 fun when you're out there struggling and suffering.
I made a commitment at one point that I was going to ride my bike to work every day, no matter what the weather was. And so it was like minus 35, I'd ride my bike. It would be torrential rain pour, I'd ride my bike. And I did it because I always, inside my head, I told myself it was adversity training. And so I was training because, things are going to be bad and you got to train for it. And if you're not training for it, then it can't always be fun.
That's fantastic.
So it worked out well.
You're approaching challenges. You're bring it on. That's
find a challenge and then go after it. So
yeah, I really resonate with that, and just with the ethos of the podcast as well.
Yeah. Did you when you didn't grow up in Canmore?
I was born there actually. Yeah.
What?
In '83,
That's
of the
not real.
last
amazing.
Babies born in this old hospital. There were 3,000 people there at that time,
way.
and no traffic lights, and just one grocery store. So it's a really idyllic, special way to grow up for sure.
Wow. And so what was the earliest you remember being on skis?
There's a photo of me on skis before I could walk. My parents were like just so keen. But my parents are really interesting. They're not competitive. They're like chill mountain hippies, I would say. They like to canoe and hike, and they're fiery in some way, but they don't push, in a competitive way. And so I think my interpretation of what's happened is this innate switch was on. I'm going for it.
So are you a competitive person? It seems like a silly question to ask. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost feels like there's like a great white shark in me that just is, driven to pursue, and I just love that feeling of competing and pushing my limits and racing.
Do you compete in everything you do? Like, is there always this like a little bit of a, I gotta...
I manage it pretty good and pretty well. It's but one thing I noticed now that I'm totally retired, I haven't ski raced in 10 years. I'm a mom of 4. There's a lot going on, a lot of demands on my time and energy. But if I do sign up for a race, there's like a racer Chandra inside me that starts doing things perfectly. Yeah. So it can be a little much even if I sign up for a race. I have to keep an eye on. It's like that, like in the movie Inside Out when different emotions have the control panel, and maybe racer Chandra should just go have a holiday.
Settle down
She's a lot.
there.
She's a lot to have on a daily basis for sure.
Wow. If you pull up to a stop sign and another car's right there, do you nose up just a little bit?
Oh my goodness. Actually, I stare right at the lights.
Yeah.
And try to switch my foot to the gas as fast as possible for my reaction time.
Atta girl.
Ridiculous, but also, I do yoga, I meditate, I'm balancing it out. One of my strength coaches, Matt Jordan, was like, "You're making a soup. Are you just pouring hot sauce in all the time? Or are you adding yogurt, and can we just balance this out a bit?" So trying to make the, not overspice the soup here.
You're not a competitive yoga person? You don't like competitively yoga?
Maybe I'm competitively pursuing enlightenment now. Like I'm going to be the most zen.
Yeah.
No, I keep a lid on it. It's a beautiful life, to have the mix, and I don't think I would have succeeded as an athlete without the ability to recover hard. You gotta let it go. You have to laugh. You have to do something else, to play a guitar. Like, let it go. Yeah. And an athlete, I'm sure you've seen in all your athletic pursuits, someone who's just frying right out on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it happens a lot. And then it's an interesting spiral because when people, they get into that point where it's like they seem lost. And it's just like, oh, no, I don't know what to do now suddenly. And it's probably a scary moment for some people who've been super competitive. And then suddenly they have this little burnout moment. And it's like, oh, now what?
Right.
That's me, and it's a good point you make too, that your sport or, isn't really who you are. It is formative, right? There's parts of it that your sport helps you grow and develop and learn about who you are too. So
amazing place to be growing and having a whole team surrounding the athlete, and everyone's cheering for me. Even when I was injured, I went to the grocery store with a big air cast boot on my foot and crutches, and I hobbled out of the car, and someone across the whole parking lot yelled, "We love you, Chandra!"
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was amazing. I was like, you know what? People care about me beyond my sport performance, and I'm a member of the community and keeping a healthy identity outside of sport.
Did you ever, and this may be touchy, but did you ever get to a point where you kind of felt like people have termed it imposter syndrome now, and you get there and you think, am I actually this good? Like, you get to that point ever, or do you think that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because when I won my gold medal, I was 22 and I hadn't won a World Cup.
You're just a kid, really.
I was so young and such a underdog.
Yeah.
Like some of the headlines in the newspapers were like, out of the blue, a thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And another one was like, Chaw-hoo.
Yeah.
And it was a big, one said colossal X-country upset. Because it was a real surprise. So then I did that. I won the gold medal, bam. But then I didn't even win a World Cup for 2 more years. It became the whole monkey on my back feeling like, was I a fluke?
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, intense.
Wow.
But then the the path for that for me was to try to get back into process focus, love of the
Right.
sport, curiosity, enjoy the journey each day, try to get back to the pre-ego feeling that I would have had in sport as I went up through it and was just curious, how good can I be? How good can I be today?
I can't imagine what it would have been like at that age to maybe, just to be at this point where it's just like, how is this happening? Like, what's going on here? Like, did you have that? Like, it must have felt like a little bit like that, wasn't it?
I was totally floored. Yeah. It was ahead of schedule to achieve that on that day, and it was such an amazing day that I appreciate so much. Even with every passing year, I think it continues to be rich that appreciate that happened. And I went to 2 more Olympics.
Yeah.
Just to appreciate how hard it was and how wonderful it was to achieve that.
So it's always a tough self-analysis, but you go to the second one and the third one, and you look at yourself and you say, am I better than I was before? Have I improved? Did everyone else just get way better? Or like, what goes on in your brain when that happens?
I changed so much through one Olympics to the next.
Yeah.
The next games were the home games in Vancouver in 2010. It was so exciting and everyone was just loving it. But the event I had won in was changing. The technique was different. It was the one I wasn't good at and I was injured. So I got through that, which was really uncomfortable because I was like, don't look at me. I can't do this one. It was just not my normal rah-rah attitude and to try and... Okay, so I did that. That was fine. I didn't learn that much. But then the next Olympics, I had such a major life meltdown that it was hard to even make the team.
Yeah.
And then I had this result that I treasure more than my gold medal. You're not going to believe it. I was 43rd. And I would trade my gold medal for it any day because the path to get to that was out of this world because I was in such a low place.
Yeah.
I lost kind of my sense of self-worth and belonging and belonging to myself and developed an eating disorder even though I knew everything about eating disorders. I was in my late 20s. Finally succumbed to, bulimia for a year was awful. And so to get out of that hole and get to the Olympics was the thing I'm most proud of in my life.
Wow.
It was so hard.
That's awesome. Is there, and because you bring it up, it is quite interesting. Like, is in that kind of sport, like in cross-country skiing, biathlon, what have you, is there a high demand on, like, being really on top of diet and weighing a certain amount and that, or is it not that important?
It's endurance sport, so there's going to be the VO2 max strength to weight ratio situation, but the volume of training and the difficulty with just staying healthy is so important. So you can definitely manage this razor edge of health. For me, there were so many factors in it because I had been so well for so long. There was definitely... your audience is like, what happened? What happened? She won the Olympics, then she had the big meltdown. I had been... dating my teammate for 10 years and we had this awful public breakup and I was so embarrassed and I felt so bad about the role I had played in it. I took it really hard personally and then felt like, well, I had a new story in my head, like I'm a bad person. And that factored into having an eating disorder, that self-worth and just a little bit of skiing fast or looking lean was, just the crumbs of feeling good a little bit. And then eating disorders can be so powerful, like a train, like you get on it and then I wanted to get off, but it was already really going and then I was out of control of it. Which is funny because it starts as a desire for control.
Right.
Then you're out of control. I mean, you see so much of this in all your sport experiences, but my personal cocktail of what mixed together to cause this was certainly that inner relationship. Not being my well self was awful.
And it's wild really when you think that, that's probably, had you not been in sport, it may have been an experience you may have had anyways. But sometimes we hold athletes to this different standard because they're supposed to be more disciplined or more controlled, and it's not always the case. And plus, you were still really young. Like, if you had been 48 and, gone through the same stuff, we'd be like, you had 40 years to figure this out. Like, why are you doing this? And it still happens.
No kidding.
So
like what the identity piece of who am I? What makes me feel good?
Yeah.
What is important to put my energy into? And having gone through it, wow, it's awful how much the opportunity cost of having an eating disorder it's such a shame. So I really feel so strongly now that I'm not my physical appearance, I'm not my results, I'm not any of the achievements. It's just, coming from a more pure energy source of self-compassion and good job, Chandra, way to go. That's really hard. Way to get to the gym, you feel good. Way to, eat healthy meals. I just do it from a place of I'm worth feeling good and healthy, and I'm worth moving.
It's an interesting shift too when you go through a bit of this psychological awareness and at some levels, it feels like we shift from an inward focus to an external focus. And so I've seen this a lot in athletes too, where initially when they're learning and they're growing and they're developing in their sport, they're very focused on them and their performance and what's happening. But then you see this big shift and they become these fun, happy people at events that everyone wants to be around. And it changes.
Nice.
It changes. So.
Like someone who's recovered or gone to a better place.
Yeah. And at some level, too, you even think maybe they didn't even have this, really downwardy kind of situation. I didn't really have that at all in sport where I went through some horrendous emotional thing at all. But then I've always wanted to be in sport someone who engages other people to come join that sport and come and experience it and be part of it. And I think that's at some levels more fun. But then you see people who are we have backstage at certain events where, man, some people are so insulated to themselves and you can't talk to them, you can't interact, they're just grouchy and mad. And then other people are walking around shaking everybody's hand and they're they're literally going over to people they don't know and saying, thank you for being here. And it's you've made my experience better by you being here. And it's whoa, that's a different, psychologically, it's really different spots to be in. So
the best of what's drawing us to these communities. I mean, I always think of it like a community. If there's, say, a ski practice for my kids and it's cold weather, they're going to cancel it, or something gets canceled, even without our sport, we're here for each other. We're growing together. We're doing something together. And through my work at Fast and Female, the charity for girls in sports, it's just super clear that girls need that social belonging in order to go feel comfortable to go and push ourselves, because our social is so important. We're so finely attuned to each other's emotion and we want to belong. So you kind of have to get that going. So my advice is we got to have birthday parties. You got to learn everyone's names, because some coaches are well, the girls aren't doing their skills and they're chatting. Literally, the most important thing is them chatting.
Yeah.
We can do all these things. We can make it fun and competitive at the same time, and that's the best mix. Which sounds like your experience when you're pointing to someone, being warm, being happy. We're a community. Yeah, it's nice.
It's and I have two girls and a boy, and it's really been interesting that. I think while it was never the intention, I think my son had a much more social experience in sport than the girls did.
Oh, wow.
But even though the girls are more socially minded, but he ended up building friendships and stuff. And that may be some other factors involved as well. So, but it's interesting. We went to, that just brings to mind, there's a, oh my goodness, what's the name of that big facility up in Edmonton that has all the basketball courts?
Terwilliger.
No, it's right off of the university farm. Anyways, it has 9 or 10 hardwood courts in it. And we went up one time for a basketball tournament, and there was a girls volleyball, a provincial girls volleyball. There must have been 2,000 girls playing volleyball. It was unbelievable.
That's
it was so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was it was loud and exciting, and it was obviously they were having more fun than just the competition part, right? They were enjoying that event. So.
That's the best. And this is the time for women's sport.
Yeah.
What a beautiful time,
Yeah.
with so many kind of catastrophic struggles in the world, seeing women's sport on the rise, and the business case is so solid. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
What a perfect time.
This may be somewhat surprising, but in the bodybuilding world, it's heavily dominated by women.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like there's like when I would go to an event, there'd be like 2 categories for me to be in, when there'd be like 5 categories for women to be in, and they'd all be full.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's probably, I don't know, it would be different from one show to the next, but it could be 60 to 70% women, and then, like a low number of
Wow.
men. It's kind of wild, because if you ever picked up a bodybuilding magazine, it would always be like, that Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of guy on the front cover.
Yeah.
So, but
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool.
it is kind of weird. And then it is pretty big sense of community in bodybuilding. That's a very interesting world.
I bet. You see people sharing all the time strategies just
Yeah.
from the bit I've experienced seeing your podcast or different friends who've been in that world.
Yeah, and it is big. It's a big community thing, and it would be different than, I don't know. I guess I have been in a cardiovascular based event, but I think when you train for a lot of those events, when you're training, you're not being that social, because you're focused on going from A to B and doing what you're doing. When you stop training at the end of the training session, then you can interact.
I did it a little differently, but
Did ya?
I'm 100th percentile extroverted.
Yeah.
And
So you'd be skiing along and talking and
and like the volume. Think of that
Yeah,
zone 1 base training. And to do the zone 1 properly,
Yeah.
you got to do it.
You did it with
pretty chill.
friends?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
And to do some of the workouts we did were 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to do
Yeah.
that with an interesting person with a great conversation.
Yeah.
And then also the hard days, like you're going to go out in the driving sleet, just ice shards
Yeah.
going into your glasses somehow on a glacier
Yeah.
in Alaska, and just, together trying to rip each other's legs off and try to go faster. Because for me, maybe the kind of that movie Seabiscuit, where they have to let the horse draw even to see the other horse's eyes. I'm more of a race horse than a training horse or work horse. So to get to train with the best people would make me go faster.
Really?
So it really relied, even though such an individual sport could not possibly have succeeded without a team and trying to, hang out with the Americans who were doing so well as well, which is kind of surprising, because if it's solitary, I couldn't have made it. That'd be too lonely. And then you just notice more that your legs are exhausted.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of my formula for something. Maybe someone who's more introverted would enjoy a longer, quiet workout.
I think you've just brought to the surface that I have no friends.
I will bike with you anytime. So now you're just in the gym giving high fives, though. You're just.
I don't know.
just in the
There's
social.
days. There's a lot of time where it's just like, just kind of put the blinders on and do what you got to do and then go. So because it's like, I think if you were doing cardio, but then in order to have a conversation, you'd have to stop. That would really change it, right? Like if you can cycle and talk and ski and talk, then that's cool. But if you want to talk about something now and you got a full stop, that doesn't
my
really work,
cardio
so,
is really easy. And I have a friend who was in like adventure racing and a friend who was in track.
Yeah.
And they run with me and they're like, why are we bobbing up and down? We look ridiculous. I run really slow.
Yeah.
And you can walk beside me. But just the gym is such a special place as well. I like to go to different rec facility gyms, go to the city gyms, go to the different. Any gym is such a great place, but I like to see someone who might not feel super confident, and I will chat them up. And I'll say,
I probably do that too, to be honest.
I always like to say, are you showing that treadmill who's boss or something silly, or it's good to see you. You look like you're having a good workout, and just make it happen in there.
It is interesting, super side point, but there is some gyms that are they're kind of community-ish, and they're like a lot of interaction and people, and there's other gyms that are very like go in and do the thing, and you almost are communicating subconsciously rather than just say, hey, how are your kids?
For
You know,
sure.
You're not doing that at all, but you're acknowledging and those are, it is interesting that schema of gyms that exist.
Everyone has headphones on.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, here comes that lady. That is me. Or me at the dog park.
Yeah.
Hey, what is that? A border collie retriever cross? And
That's right.
just ridiculous. But I probably got that from my mom. She'll probably chat with the supermarket checkout lady for 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Do you go to the gym with your headphones on?
No, but I can't find any of my headphones. My kids wrecked them. and I find fiddling with getting the right song actually distracts me from just
true.
trying to do my workout in some ways.
Yeah.
And then I
makes
have my
sense.
phone. If I can put the phone in the cubby,
Right,
and then I'll be
right.
like, at the end of all 3 sets, you can go see that no one texted you.
Yeah. It's actually, it's an interesting, good tip for working out. Probably any kind of working out is put your phone aside.
Oh, what a
Really,
difference!
It's
What a
amazing
difference.
and you can do it. You can do this. So it's
Even
not
for
that bad.
just till the end of this set, and you can make it. It's actually a nice little treat. You go look at it.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen quite a few people over the last while they started bringing in these old school like iPods and iPod shuffles and stuff,
Amazing.
and they're playing their tunes because you can't bug them at all when they're playing their music that way. It's pretty smart actually.
This is a wild time to be in to manage our
Yeah.
technology down, but and whatever works. Whatever's working for any individual to go to any gym at any time.
Yeah.
I applaud you. Do that. Do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
I remember back when like there was like 1 or 2 gyms, and now there's so many gyms. It's unbelievable.
Cool.
And plus there's facilities like, everywhere. Like you can go skiing. There's so many different things you can do. It's amazing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. What if you had to look at, just going back to when we talk about girls in sports, how, like, if you were to look at cross-country skiing, competitive cross-country skiing, what's the mix, do you think, male to female?
I'm not sure. Yeah. But just from my observation, there's more men than women competing in cross-country skiing.
Yeah.
And more, no, I don't have the stats handy, so I'm going to refrain.
My friend at the gym, Kathy, she said she was curious about this, and I said I would ask you about it. But do you think that there's a difference between men and women? Like if a man gets into competitive cross-country skiing, can they last for X period of years? Can women last as long, or would their career in it, if that's the right word to use, be somewhat shorter, or do you think they would be similar?
I would assume almost longer because women, as they pursue endurance sport, from my understanding in running, there's like an equilibrium point where it almost balances out. The cultures of groups of dudes training and groups of women training are sometimes totally different. Juggling lots of different things, like doing school, and I was running this whole charity, and kind of this like unworthiness, like I have to do everything, perfect. And I remember, in my day, it could be totally different now, and the guys could just chill and have coffee and maybe play some video games.
Yeah.
So trying to keep an eye on and everyone having the right mix to pursue sport at whatever level. That's interesting. So your friend was curious about the kind of peak ages, right?
Well, and I guess
sports.
it's a peak, but it also, on like if it's a bell curve, right? Is the bell curve wide for men or more narrow, men versus women, or is it fairly similar? It'd be kind of interesting to look at.
It would be, yeah. No,
but then there's also societal impacts, right? Like where you have, you can only do sport for so long, and at some point you have to start earning an income. You have to.
Yeah.
And maybe you can do it in sport. It's entirely possible you could be a professional X. And then, but a lot of people I think get out of sport because, from what I've seen anyways, kids oftentimes are a motivator to not take this other thing so seriously because you have to deal with this.
Oh my goodness. That's an amazing can of worms. Like women who are able to have a kid and keep competing. And that is certainly a situation that gets better every year. The big Nike blow up over women losing their sponsorships when they were having kids. I remember that was a big deal a couple of years ago. And in Nordic skiing with a late peak age, there were definitely some women having kids and coming back, and that's fantastic to see. Even towards the end of my career, they started to have, like at FIS, the Fédération Internationale of Ski.
Okay.
They had like a family tent. They had like
that's
eventually
awesome.
someone posted a picture. There was like a nursing station. Like we're making environments that are set up for this, which is so exciting.
That's great. Yeah, I remember you just caused me to remember one time. I don't know if have you ever hiked the Iceland Trail in Yoho? Mm-hmm. We got up to, as you go up the hill from the parking lot essentially towards Emerald Park, and then you kind of turn and go along the trail. We got up there, and I had a bunch of young kids with me that were hiking with me, and they were all like dying. They'd just gone up one hill, and they were all near death. And we got up to the top of the hill, and there was a lady and her, like, they couldn't have been 3 and 4 years old, these two kids. And it's like, how did they get up here? And they're just out there having fun in the water and the ice. And
wow.
That was awesome.
Impressive.
And then the kids were all like, these were all like, 14, 15-year-olds were all like, you could tell it was like, quit your complaining. Cause
too funny.
Yeah, so that was pretty great.
Oh, yeah. I definitely thought I was going to be, climbing up mountains with my kids, but in reality, we are just going to go to the pool. This summer in Canmore, after about a month, they had this hilarious mutiny. My kids are 8, 7, 5, and 3. Yeah. And we're going to beautiful spots and the quarry and different secret creeks. And then after a few weeks, they're like, Mom, we're done with creeks.
No.
And we went to the pool for the rest of August. That's what they wanted to do.
Are they, like, what do you have them doing? Like, are they into sports much at all? Or what's their... You said they eat dirt or something.
No, we're just out in Canmore playing in nature. I'm noticing that my ethos is less oriented towards sport too terribly much, even though I was really pushing sport as the leader of Fasted Female for all those years.
Sure.
Girls in sports. And it's incredible, and it's totally linked to leadership, confidence, resilience, coachability, teamwork, amazing skills that we all want our daughters to have more female leadership, make the world a better place. I will say I'm noticing that what I'm tending to do is just be present, enjoy nature, enjoy time together. We're maybe I'm too risk averse. I've just never heard anyone say, "Oh, that kid was underscheduled and just played in nature." And because I have a pack of them, there's 2 boys and 2 girls, and they're pretty close in age that they can really socialize and play and make up running races and stuff. Right. So it'll be interesting to see. Have me back on the pod. Yeah. It's one thing to be an expert in women in sport and girls in sport, and another thing to be a parent and actually experience it, and their different energies. Yeah. Because I was like, okay, we're ripping it up. No, my daughter is skiing green runs and chatting with me, or she wasn't interested in doing too many sports a couple of years ago or activities. She would like to read. Awesome. Really? Yeah, because these are the kids. They come to us and we get to know them. Yeah. So I said, what do you want to do, sweetie? Anything you want to do? She wanted to swim. So we started going to the Vacova pool on Tuesday mornings. Her and I get a nice, Starbucks sandwich, something she wants. They go to the pool. And then I heard my inner voice say, teach her some strokes. And then I was like, knock it off. We are just enjoying swimming. We're just looking at bubbles. Yeah. So my ethos that I'm actually living is the love. Like they love water. Yeah. They are doing swim club, and they sometimes don't want to ski, and then they don't ski. Yeah. Sometimes we just go to the Nordic Center, eat a pile of chocolate, and go home. Yeah. It's
interesting when you like as a parent when you see your child's passion arrive. Cool. You know what I mean? Like
tell me about it. I'm like excited.
Yeah. So where like my son was into basketball from the moment he touched the basketball, and so, but it got. Worse isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? Like it got more intense as time went on, and his experience with it eclipsed my parenting abilities, and to the point where I was maybe even a detriment to his success in sport. Oh, wow. Which was kind of weird, right? So, and that's a different story. And I think a lot of, as much as we encourage kids to be good in sport, I think we need to teach parents how to be good at parenting a kid in sport.
Yeah,
so
and what
something
do we?
to that.
I'm kind of understanding. Like, it feels like we're all walking around with different job descriptions in our head for what I'm supposed to do as a parent, because no one's giving it to us. And so I feel like, okay, my inner job description is to, nurture them on their way, try to model. Everything is modeling, and to attune to them and let them kind of unfold and grow. And they're also teaching me, if my daughter's super chill, it's wonderful. I should really chill out. And just kind of being supportive of them as they go along. Yeah. So I'm not pushing too terribly much, and I'm not hearing anyone say like, "Oh, that kid didn't get pushed enough." I just haven't seen.
If only
that.
you put him into to that, they would have been so good at that.
And the importance of talent and success. Like, what do I want for my kid? Yeah. What do I want for my kids, for myself? I want them to enjoy movement in a long-term way. Yeah. And to be curious, to try things. And then they're going to be finding their own favorite things. I'm here as a guide, like, hey, you might not have heard of jiu-jitsu, but check it out. Sure. And then they're going to be gravitating towards things. I will say my parents did the put them in everything, and I loved it. Yeah. So I'm having some things to work through when I put them in everything and they don't love it, because I was like, bro, I love everything. Yeah. And
in some ways that's a skill that they learn too, where you can't love everything. And that's part of life. Sometimes you just have to deal with that. And you go out, you put a smile on your face and go and play badminton, and even if you don't really love it and you're not going to super excel at it, put a smile on your face and try it out, see what happens.
Try it out. Being willing to try things and experiment, because that, I feel like my whole life is so iterative. Who do you know who's like, oh, I've got it all figured out now? Yeah. I mean, in everyone's career, they're on what's the next thing for me? Especially in your line of work, you must really see. Yeah. We're not going to stop evolving ever. So the skill that I want the kids to have is to tune to themselves, try things, and if they could have those two skills, they could go super far. That would last for decades and decades. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing myself. Okay, I'm at this stage of motherhood. What's going to happen with my career? It's just, and you're never done.
And what's wild about it too? I look back to when my kids were your kids' age, and I think what did I miss? Was there things that I should have done and that I didn't do for them? And how did they arrive at where they arrived? And should I have done something sooner? It's wild. And then you look back and every kid's different. And that's why there's no manual, because there's no, it would be an infinite number of manuals, because every kid's so different. And and then they go and they freaking change on you. They start out one way and it's like, what are you doing that now? And it's so surprising, and you just,
Wow.
And what, the other thing too, and I'm sure this is part of a competitive athlete parent bringing up kids. And I think that's almost could be a course in university, because a competitive person imposes competitiveness on those around them a little bit. And that's not the case, right? There's kids that aren't competitive. It's just who they are. And instead of wanting to go on bike rides and where they're really pushing it, maybe they just want to go hiking or camping or something. And there's something else they get into, reading. You had mentioned too. Maybe they just want to be into reading and be really I'm fascinated by people, and I guess my competitive nature kind of kills me, because when I hear someone quote from a book that I read that I cannot quote from, that drives me nuts.
Interesting.
It makes me want to go reread the book and take notes on it and get more serious about the book. But some people just read to enjoy, and they enjoy that. And they're not being even competitive about it. So.
You're not A-type. You're AAA.
I don't know what
A++.
I have my moments.
that inner person is you could do everything more better. Yeah. I have to manage that so much, that perfectionism. Yeah. Or, it doesn't always feel like perfectionism. It feels like optimization. We're good. It's exhausting for those around me. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's fun to hear how the kids change and do different things. And maybe, our role is I got enough to work on myself a lot of the time. And if I see an over-competitive parent who's maybe overly invested in their kid's career, I always think the same thing. You go do a triathlon. Go get your, I'm so intense. I would never put that on my kids. I had 4 of them just to spread it out.
Yeah.
And I do a running race. If I need
Yep.
to do something, I can go. Yesterday, I jumped on the big ball in the gym for the first time. I was terrified. Like, if everyone should go push their limits,
I sat on
do
it
it
once.
myself.
I'm not jumping on it.
But you like pushing your limits. It is advertised on your website.
Yeah, I don't like the ball so much. I don't have good balance.
Yet. See, where's
No.
your growth mindset?
No. Well, you know what? That actually, like, as a small segue into an interesting thought is, I think one of the challenges for competitive people too is that we have this sense, and it's a theme on Instagram or wherever, that you can always be better. You just have to that 1% per everything you do, and you're going to get better, and you're going to get better. There does come a point in life where that's not true. Like, you do not continuously excel up to the day you die. You don't. And it's not honest or real. And that's a tough part for competitive people, because and that happened to me where, like, I had been successful in different things, and then you get to a point that's like, whoa, that's not what I can do now. Like, I'm older, or maybe my height and weight is wrong, or whatever the case may be. That's a challenge for competitive people, because you think you can always get better.
Right, to manage that. Is it comparison, the core situation?
Yeah, I think we're comparing ourselves a lot, but I don't know.
To pass.
What do you think? Is comparing yourself good, or is it it's a trick question?
Yeah. Well, I what's coming up for me is what I'm striving for, because I did reach some great levels in sport.
Yeah.
I do feel a deep peace. I don't have to prove.
But is that because you think I could still beat you? Like, do
No,
you have
I really can't. There's you've been to Canmore.
Yeah.
There's another level.
Yeah.
There's always another level, and it's always relative. Like,
Yeah.
I have 2 ex-Olympian friends, and I ski with both of them, and one I can barely hang in there, and
Really?
one's like,
Wow.
"Oh, we're doing 2 laps. Are you out of your mind?" and then I
That's
just
so
thinking
good.
it's relative. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
relative, and I try to teach my kids that. Like, I don't compare all the time to my friend Carrie. She is a way better swimmer and has a way nicer house than me. And if I thought about that every day, I would feel like garbage.
Yeah.
So we have these, like, intention cards. I think comparison to my inner journey is totally healthy. I'm trying to set goals that are meaningful to me. Like, right now I have a goal of having more peace and harmony and calmness around my family of origin. So I've got a whole training plan. I've got a goal to get to by July. I want to be this much more calm in my family dynamic. And I have goals on my keynote speaking. I have goals. I'm thinking of getting a job in the fall when my kids are more at school. So I have, like, other goals.
Are you saying you have, like, a competitive peacefulness?
Win at peacefulness.
How long do you meditate?
Yeah, I know.
I bet you I can beat you.
I know, right? I'm
That's
taking
amazing.
so many vitamins now. I'm gonna get orthorexia. Do you know
What's
that?
that?
That's
What's
obsessiveness with health.
Oh,
My husband teases me because I drink really vile green smoothies. And I love them, and I'm not tired of them. It's just, just kale and blah beets. And there's Jim Carrey SNL skit that's really old. Have you seen it? The Juice Weasel. So
No.
I'm getting constantly teased in my home for being a juice weasel, and he plays like Jacques Lalande, who's a juice creator. This is kind of getting into a tangent now.
Yeah, it's good.
But he drinks his green juice, and he's like, I'm invisible. And they're like, where's your family? He's like, I outlived them all. So I love health too much.
Yeah, there's the complete opposite of that is Jim Gaffigan talking about juicing.
Okay.
So he goes to his doctor and then later he says, "Can I juice a ham?"
Yes, exactly.
It's perfect.
And that's what my husband would like to have.
Yeah.
No.
Perfect. You mentioned, well, and of course, one thing that you're passionate about now is getting up in front of people and speaking. And what's, lots of people talk. What is it that people are most interested in from you in particular? What do you think? What are people coming to you for, and they're saying, I need more of this?
I am getting a lot of audiences looking for resilience. And and life is impossible. It's so overwhelming. And I think people come to me for the gold medal, the excellence, and they stay for the mental health recovery.
Yeah.
And my keynote has become more and more vulnerable every year. I have a couple different speaking coaches. And so I got this keynote. It took me a long time to go from and then I won the medal and I beat my nemesis, Claudia, which was my main story. Like I've been on the stage since '06. I won the medal and started keynote speaking, and it was a blast. I had 1,000 people and telling really dynamic stories. But then over time, I got braver and braver to tell the story of having a hard time. And I thought that was really brave to say, just to stand on a stage and say I had a hard time and admit that was so hard. And now every time I'm practicing, my coach is like, I think you should say more, go deeper, where the lows are lower and the highs are higher.
Right.
And that's a gradual process of just the more vulnerable I am, the more the audience is getting out of it.
Yeah.
So they're seeing me up there and they're like, oh, happy gold medal girl had a super hard time and went on antidepressants and hated herself for a while and had tons of psychology and rewrote her story. And they're like, oh, we're all in it together.
Yeah.
I'm not alone, and we're all struggling together. So
That's
that common
interesting.
humanity, I think, is what I'm giving the audience. I care about them, and we're feeling it together.
Because that's what they connect with. Like they're seeing themselves in that, not in, oh, you won a gold medal. Oh.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm not going to win a gold medal.
Yeah, so. Then my inner critic took over my life and told me I was no good in a variety of ways. Excuse me. Everyone's like, I know. Yeah. And to just explain the moments I had when I was at my lowest low, couldn't even leave my hotel room, and I just heard this knock on the door, and I was like, I'm not going to answer that. Fine, I'll answer that. And it was my Ski Tech Mika book, this fridge-shaped suite, and he was like, I see you, and I see that you're struggling.
Nice.
That was awesome.
So, when you look back to, and not to dive into specific challenges, but when you look back at kind of the variety of struggles that you had, and probably a lot of people have too, was there catharsis in there? Like, was there moments when, and a purpose, and someone like that guy shows up at your door? Or was there, what does this, what's that claw that comes down and pulls us up out of that?
Such a beautiful way to put it.
You can use it in your talk.
You bet.
As long as you...
I will put you in the fine print of the credits. That is so beautiful. Yeah, I think that connection with others to witness someone and see them and not try to fix it. That's a big thing right now, right?
Yeah.
To validate, it's so hard because it's so obvious what everyone else should do.
Yeah.
But it's so helpful to just accompany. So I think that's really helpful. And I think of times when I'm when I'm struggling and I was like, go away, leave me alone, I'm horrible, go away. And times when sometimes I'm the one knocking on the door like, hey, are you okay in there? And just how am I blocking love? How am I not giving or receiving love? And I think of that almost as a framework for my day, my week, my life. Am I giving and receiving love? Am I bringing my whole heart to it? Am I doing my best? And am I learning? Yeah.
You wonder and that is really quite smart too, where are you blocking out love? And because I think at some levels we like to wallow as humans. We just like to kind of sit in our own stink and just whatever.
You know what I'm so into now is our stories. Have you been thinking about this? The stories you're living in, that you're telling yourself. This has been so powerful, and it was powerful through my meltdown too. Because at that time, take a little time machine. Chandra in 2012. I'm worthless, I'm unlovably obese, I'm the worst person. And that was the story. So then every day I woke up and listened to that story and developed an eating disorder and had a horrible time. And then I managed to work with my psychologist to get a new story. You know what? In that situation, you acted like a human. You made mistakes. You're not unlovable for making a mistake. Yeah. And that kind of ego perfectionism, we had to just break it apart. So then I was like, oh, my new story. I made mistakes. I'm a whole human, warts and all. I'm still lovable without being perfect.
Yeah, it's so revisioning your story and
So what are the stories I'm in now about how I have to perfectly make my family avoid all pain in the future?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. What?
Yeah.
Wait. So what are the stories that I'm in now about Also, this is big in the Atomic Habits book, is your identity is so powerful. And I've gotten so much out of this. If I feel like that's me, to move and eat well and be happy and invest in my relationships, that's me being me. And then that becomes such a great identity. Or in a place where I feel way less resourceful, like I feel like I'm really disorganized and I mess everything up. So then I'm trying this identity shift. That's like me to look at my calendar. That's like me to make a list. And I'm working on these shifts, going towards it with identity and action.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the additional interesting part of life of having kids and being able to experience that through them a bit too, I suppose, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, managing like the rigidity of like elite athlete and schedule, and let's keep everything and like having flexibility for their changing on a dime, and speaking of changing, they might need 4 outfits just to get out the door, and then and then you're like, we're going out the door. Why are you naked? This is so good for how much patience I'm cultivating.
Yeah.
But the story thing's been really neat. Like, what are we inside as a story as Canada, and like the moment we're in, or inside our families? What are the stories? And starting to notice those has been really interesting. Like you're working out to this high degree and performing at work. Do you have an inner story of like, I'm Craig, I'm just rocking?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't. I may think about it, but not put it in that same context, I think about we've had people on where they talk about brand, and it's kind of, that's part of that too. That your story is a bit of your brand, and your brand is based on the story, and, and you do have to position or contextualize your story to make sense to yourself and to those around you, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. I think that the one thing that's been probably the most interesting, though, is, and you said that you're an extrovert as well, and I think that is intentionally being extroverted changes life. Even if you're introverted and you'd rather not, but being extroverted, like how can you be a parent and be introverted? Like, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't even, those two things almost wouldn't go together. You couldn't be a coach and be introverted. Maybe
that's the extrovert bias.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah.
Maybe there's other powers that introverts have that are underappreciated. Like I read that book. I don't want to highlight books you haven't read now. I'm glad you said that. Man, do we have a lot of books to read. Okay, so Susan Cain wrote a book about introverts and extroverts about that bias, and they were kind of saying that extroverts like will sit around the table and be like, yeah, that's the solution, blah, blah, blah. But the person who might think things through a little more and come to a even better solution, but our bias would be to yell and drown it out. So I've been thinking about that a little bit.
That's interesting.
Just kind of the beauty in all the different facets, that I don't even know about. I'm just doing this one.
This is the one you know today. And you may look back at it and think, whoa, you may be surprised. You may surprise yourself when you look back, I suppose.
I know, right? Stay present. Don't look back. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a fun journey to be, in the athletic field, to be pushing limits and trying to pull in strengths, and then in, a post-athletic career to be like, what are my strengths other than skiing fast? So fast.
Yeah. Well, and then you have to distill it down to find out what that, skiing fast is an outcome of something else, right?
That's a good point.
It's not, skiing fast is having, a discipline, having high VO2 max, and having done things that culminate in being able to ski fast. So just like most of the things, like you can't just suddenly start doing some kind of surgery that, you've never been to med school for. Like, I suppose you could try.
Right. You're a product
you learn through experience, but you're a product of
effort.
All the things that you do leading up into it. So
how much do you work in core values in your kind of hiring and placement? Because I just feel like that's so important to me and has helped me so much.
It's interesting. At some levels in the staffing world, you start to wonder if everyone's core value isn't simply money. Because it's...
Wow.
It is weird, actually.
Okay.
And that sounds maybe a little bit dark.
It's just a market. There's a price on talent, and that's...
Yeah. Because if core values were critical to people's career decisions, then the amount that, if the amount they made was exactly the same, then you'd see a lot more moves. But it isn't the case at all. I would say that's a bit anecdotal, but I would say that unless there's at least significant, meaning measurable, a measurable amount of increase in income, people don't make moves even if they're good for themselves, which is surprising actually, because I think a lot of humans, especially when we've gone through things like COVID, one of our core values is safety and not changing. And just we have this fear that if we make any sort of move left or right, we're going to break something. And then so we stay firmly in the middle just to be safe. And I think a lot of people, that's a core, it's a value, as a belief, but it's a core value to be very safe and not risk. So I would guess if we could do a sociological study or a psychological study on risk aversion, from 2018 to 2026, I would suspect there's a significant difference.
Oh my goodness. That is such an interesting
a lot of people won't take risks now. It's really changed.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So there was a point in time where, like, if I think back to, if we said let's say 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, people would just move like over $1. Like they wouldn't even think twice about it. Or they would take opportunities that paid less because they were getting more and they could see a longer term future. But now people are just so scared that, what if I take a $10 hit, then I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage and suddenly my kids are going to be homeless and everything's going to go terrible. So there's this real deep kind of like societal fear behind risk taking, which is it's a little dangerous.
Yeah I wonder if our our feeding us the more scary stuff, it can affect our scarcity mindset. I mean, we're just Homo sapiens, we're just like cave people.
Yeah, well, and you wonder too, like we're well into this whole, this isn't a political podcast, but we're well into this tariff conversation, about Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. and China and everywhere else. But I think, likely if we could have the benefit of, the hot tub time machine, it could be a couple years down the road, we'll probably look back and think, that wasn't as bad as what we thought it was going to be. Yeah. It's not going to cause collapse where we're not going to have clothes and, we're in the dark ages again. We're going to be through it. Just like COVID. Like we all got through COVID and it had an impact. But we were scared during that time frame, and I just wonder what is, we're almost getting programmed to be scared now, because we're seeing so many of these large events that come in and they're catastrophes, and so then it's really easy to catastrophize everything that we talk about. It's like, the price of eggs are gonna quadruple, and it's gonna be a catastrophe. So it's interesting, and so then how do you when you apply that to sport, then sport starts to become something that we can evolve ourselves in, because it pulls us away from reality a little bit, which is an interesting transformation in sport. Yeah. I don't know.
An outlet, and my understanding of all the world events that I can't do anything about, because the more I dive in, I'm actually less able to action and do something local or canvas or work for causes I care about, or go out and ladle some soup myself, or do something, because I am now paralyzed by the magnitude of catastrophe. Right. So I'm trying to understand that, really investing deeply in the news cycle isn't helping me help anyone. Yeah. Because sometimes you feel like, I have to keep up on it, otherwise I'm ignorant of the problems. But I'm actually more action oriented. I'm actually taking care of my neighbor who's a senior, because I'm not just sitting here freaking out.
I can deal with this and draw a circle around it. I can deal with that.
I think that's actually a worthwhile place to direct my my attention and resources back to. That's such a sport maxim. Control what you can control, and it is. I do still feel like I'm contributing to the whole when I contribute to my neighbor. Yeah,
and it gets me thinking about that. Your topic. If everyone's saying, I need to manage my resilience. Does that mean we have a societal lack of resilience suddenly? Or has this always been an issue? Or why is resilience such a important topic? I wonder if we went back to our great grandparents and be like, you got to be resilient. And they're like, what are you talking about?
I know, and they lived through, awful wars
Yeah.
and times, but then, the fragmented, nonstop news feed. And then mental health is such an amazing, world in that we're aware of it more now. And people often say, like, well, are there more problems now, or are we just more aware of them? And it seems to be that there's both.
Yeah, that's true.
Both an increased stress, anxiety, depression, and demands, and then there's an increased awareness that we're able to be vulnerable and talk about it, which is the only way out of it.
Yeah.
I find just, shining a light on things is so much more powerful. And even if I just push myself just to let someone know who's safe to me, really how I'm actually doing, it's amazing. The next day I'm already feeling better, and I can be that space for someone else and hold that space for each other.
Yeah. That's probably a way more powerful statement than you're aware of. Like, to say that I'm a safe spot for you is pretty powerful. You know what I mean? Like, you're not at risk right
to
now.
Be heard, to let it out. You would often hear me say, so if someone starts to cry, I'm like, let it out, let it all out. And like the kids, it's an awesome time to be a parent with all the emotional intelligence that they get to learn at school. And my kid Bruce was learning about letting his feelings out. It was so cute, and he was in kindergarten. And so he learned that we must let our feelings out. And so he got into going to sit at the top of the stairs and go like yell it down the stairs. Yeah. It was so cute. We tell it as a funny story now, but because he was really taking it literally, like, let the feelings out.
Yeah.
It's just
That's awesome. Yeah. Did it
let
help?
him out.
Did he feel better?
Yeah, he did feel better. He took it to a very, very strong expulsion, like an exorcism.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. But it's just an awesome time for mental health and awareness, and just, you don't hear as much, people just labeling that whining or something. You can be more real.
So I guess one thought might be, do you, because it's front of mind for you, do you encourage resilience with your kids? Like, how do you drop that into them?
I'm doing my job description in parenting. I'm doing an evidence-based approach. So if I'm able to, read from different reliable sources, like I just was learning having a goal really helps reduce anxiety and really helps with resilience. And that's so true, to get me out of ruminating and thinking about the issues in my life. I made this goal of getting a new job in the fall, and I applied for a big job, and I didn't get it. And then I posted to LinkedIn that I didn't get it, and I just felt alive. I just felt alive being
awesome.
Even on the calls. I didn't get an interview. I got like the pre-calls with the recruiter. And just selling myself and hearing how much I wanted to work. I was like, I'm alive. And that week or two, and then I imagined myself in the role and what that would do for my family. I was not very anxious those 2 weeks. I was pursuing a goal, and that was occupying, my brain, all of our brains.
Right.
Maybe it's like a border collie, and it's just chewing on your furniture, and you have to train it, give it a job. Dogs need jobs, brains need jobs. And so that's like one example of something. So I started talking about goal setting with the kids. Oh, tons of fun. They don't get it at all. They write like a Dear Santa list of toys. So then we were kind of gradually working with the list to be like, well, what do you want to become? Like, do you want to be better at swimming, or a better friend, or have more fun playing in the dirt because your mom doesn't sign you up for sports? And then we worked, and then we just taught the kids SMART goals. Yeah. And it's so reinforcing for my partner and I, because we're like, we should write our goals. Let's write our goals down. We're modeling this. Yeah. And then modeling making mistakes, and modeling falling down 7 times and getting up 8. Yeah. Making a culture in the family, like, intentionally. I'm not leading an organization right now. I'm leading the Chandra Crawford. This poor family, like, can we get her a job and get her out of here? She's got a lot to give. Yeah. But it's fun.
That's good to have goals as kids. It's a tough one. I think a lot of parents they're not trained, or they're not prepared to help their kids with goals, and it is valuable. Like, I remember there was a Zig Ziglar. So in one of his things, here I am quoting something.
Yes, you.
He was saying, much longer story, but he gets to this point where he's got an archer who's like a world champion archer, and he's going to be blindfolded and he has to shoot at a target. And the entire message is you can't hit a target you can't see.
Nice.
So, and and that's what we need to do for people is help them see targets and make it real.
Meaningful, good goals too. It seems like sometimes this can get like really individualistic, like what I want and I'm going to do, and but collective goals as well. Like what do we envision for our community, for our extended family, for our country, for countries we aren't even in right now, and that's like how can we contribute to all envisioning together a better.
So that brings up a very interesting thought, and you're well into this, so it would probably something you think about. Why do we need athletes in Canada? Why do we spend one nickel on promoting sport?
I see a lot of value in our athletes and our sport. Yeah.
What is that value?
Well, the value proposition on investing in the athletes is the inspiration it provides to society. When you see those Olympic races and when you watch Summer McIntosh and you just feel like she did it and I can maybe try a little harder on my goals too. When you see even the cheesy commercials during the Olympics that make you feel something, like one of the great programs that talks about your coaches, when they have like a really gut-wrenching ad like Dear Parents or Dear Coach. And I love that because that's all of us. That's not just that shiny athlete. That's all of us who cheered for them, who maybe sponsored them if we could, who watched them, who clapped, who read about them in the paper, who wrote about them. And that's like, we're collectively part of it. That's what I really find a lot of value in. Yeah,
isn't it interesting that if you like took it to pure economics, it's not really any, like there would be altruistics and maybe third party and like, I forget what the term is called, but when you have results or benefits that are very hard to like say 1, 2, 3, this is the result, So, but it's, and I think that national identity component, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And how much is intangibles? Actually, everything. Like, you're putting in all these leaders, and like leaders get a really just massive compensation because of the intangibles. In a lot of ways, and that's something we can't directly measure. It's in your hearts and minds.
Oh, totally. I don't know. Have you've probably been to Jamaica at some point?
Just once.
So, Jamaica's got this sense of an amazing sense of pride for their nation about how fast they can run.
As they should.
And it isn't genetic. It's weird that you would think, because there's genetically very similar people all over the place, but they have this national pride behind, and in the schools, like in like super rural, like Usain Bolt comes from like, it would be hard to find a Canadian city that's as backwards as where he comes from.
No way.
Oh yeah. Oh. Like it's like tin shacks. But at the schools they run. And they all run. And they, in their minds, they envision the running. They see their national competitors running, and they do that.
That is so cool.
He comes from Falmouth. So foul mouth.
Very wild.
So,
Oh, that's so inspiring.
And we have a sense of pride too around hockey and around our, obviously, cross-country skiers.
Do you feel like we could continue, and we're in a real season of it now, but dial up? There's no downside to being proud of our strengths.
Yeah, that's true.
And, culturally, we've been proud of our humility. We can have kindness and pride and dominate in sports as well. And if anything, Canada, the world needs more Canada. Export our kindness and export our, incredible abilities and resources and energy. And I just think that that's something we can be more proud of.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. It's an interesting era that we're in right now too, where I think because the U.S. and Canada, they just kind of grew beside each other. And it would be like two different plants just kind of growing up beside each other, not knowing that they're that different. But then you start to impose some realities like what's going on right now, and you start to say, wow, we actually are different. There's like legitimate differences here that we should be considering. And there's a good sense of pride behind it. And one of the big ones is that, this gets political, but in the U.S. they're saying, look, we're going to show Canada how to defend itself properly, how to have a proper military. And it's like, why? We've been defending our fisheries since there was water and we were here. Like, we're not out there imposing anything on other countries. We always go out as a defensive and peacekeeping environment. But the U.S. is being very insistent that we build our military so it can be more like them, because we are supposed to be more like them, because that makes more sense. But
this is our hero's journey. We're the hero. We're the protagonist. And when you're watching a movie and reading a good book, the appearance of a villain, it's important. Yeah. And it's testing the hero. It's making us grow. We're going to transform in very important ways to be even better. Yeah. So I think that's the athlete mindset of like, this is an opportunity.
Well, that's right. And, you apply the athlete context and you say, well, how good is an athlete ever going to be if they never compete? Mm-hmm. They're not. They're just going to, how would we ever know that it's possible to run a mile in less than 4 minutes if you never even competed with someone where that was possible? Yeah. So now we're in a competition.
Challenge is opportunity.
We're learning, so, yeah.
And challenge is opportunity. And you also mentioned, think a couple years down the road. Think about how you feel about COVID now. Hey, walk in nature, hug your family, do your best, set some goals that are within our control, manage our, ingestion of the news cycles for the good of all. And be the hero. Be the hero on our own journey. Like it'd be so boring if the hero just started out and then came home and it was all the same. Yeah. We have to be tested, and it's an opportunity.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's a bit of an interplay between the amount of information and the amount of stuff that we can absorb and the amount of time it takes to actually do that. And there's a bit of a pushback in the media where it's just like, stick to the basics. Like in a lot of things, stick to the basics. You don't need to know everything about everything, and most of it's fake. And so it's that's interesting.
If anything, the skill set now is the skill to manage overwhelm, and the skill, like the discipline of the athlete to wake up, work even when you don't feel like it, and do all the actions required, and rest when you don't feel like it, and all those things. It's the same discipline to be well in today's world, to manage the inputs, to manage our relationships, to manage, getting out in real life away from the screens.
Yeah. So when you're out there talking about resilience, where's we should do like a little study on where the word resilience comes from.
Yeah,
from why we keep talking about it.
Resiliere, it comes from, no, I don't know.
It's got to be some Italian root.
Yeah, and I did look it up when I read a book called Resilience. Yeah. But what is most important about it is to see the challenge as an opportunity for my growth. And then I think to do things together. And what audiences are really appreciating when I'm up there, and I take them on the roller coaster of highs of winning the gold medal, lows of losing my confidence and self-worth and health, clawing back to health as an even higher high, just baseline health. And I'm not advising, I'm taking them on the ride, and they're feeling seen, and they're feeling their own experiences, and they're feeling their own resilience, their own micro motivation to tackle things. I just want them to leave the room ready to face things that tiny bit more. Yeah. And that's a win. Yeah. To just face our challenge.
Like what was it in Rocky where Rocky says, like you can get hit, but it's really about getting back up. But is that resilience?
Yes, absolutely. And the formula for that is to build up some confidence, and confidence, surprisingly, comes from action. Mm-hmm. So I was known for my confidence in my skiing, and I would make confidence like a patchwork quilt. I would take one little snippet of like, I skied with that fast girl for one step, and I could bench press the same as my hero, Becky Scott, that one day. And I would put together these bits, and then I would focus on that. Not on like the gaping chasm between me and the world's best. Yeah. I would focus on these tiny glimmers, and that would start to create a bigger whole. So little bits of action. And I really believe in showing my brain that I can do things. So I'm not going to feel like it, and I'm going to think I can't do it. I can't jump on the high ball in the gym. I can't apply for that job. And then I'm just going to show my brain who's boss and do it. And I'm going to do something, and my brain's like, she is pretty confident.
Have you got a book in the works?
Well, that would be tons of fun.
Yes, you should.
If you want to hear everything and more. But for now, I'm just percolating, thinking of these things. I would love to write a book. That'd be tons of fun.
Yeah. Because there's so many facets to being resilient. Because like you said, you have to, sometimes you got to stand in the wind. So otherwise, you're not going to know what it's like to stand in the wind. And then other times you have to do other things. So there's a lot to it.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a gift to get to be here, get to do this, get to go for it. Just wake up today. We're here. Let's do it. We're just this glimmer, and we feel so self-important and scared, like everyone's watching us. No.
What scares you now?
I find parenting pretty intense. This is one of my jokes.
You're scared. Are you scared to screw these kids up, or what?
For sure. Like
really,
even when you mention I look back and think, should I have X, Y, Z, which is inevitable, because it's a very complex problem. But my joke right now is, I'm just a walking amygdala. There's not even a Chandra anymore. I'm just the fear center of the brain. Yeah. Thanks. Nice to meet you. Yeah. They say your amygdala opens when you have a baby and it never closes.
That's interesting.
So I can get a little. I have to manage that.
Yeah.
And that the combo of perfectionism and the intensity of the kiddos, I have to manage that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the that's probably what I'm most worried about, because I had an eating disorder and my brother passed away from addictions. That stuff is real. Yeah. And for me to manage to not feel like everyone is at risk of eating disorders and addictions that can be kind of intense for me. And
so that's very close to mine.
Super real.
Yeah.
And then in sport and in being a woman, you're going to see a lot of diet culture and people wasting our precious lives and energy on worrying about how we look. And that's something I work really hard. But my understanding is that I have to, work on myself, heal myself. It's one thing to say, all food is good. There's no such thing as junk food. And another to show the kids, I'll eat some candy too. What the hey?
Yeah.
That's just a tiny example, but or in my family, my partner, I've almost totally quit drinking. We don't have alcohol in the house, and it feels fantastic. So little things I can do that heal me for my family history.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, and it's we all have fears. So
okay, good. Phew! I thought it was the only one.
Yeah, it's good to recognize what they are, and then know them, and then to be resilient at some levels, you have to know what buttons you have that are getting pushed. If you don't know what the buttons are, then how can you acknowledge what's going on? So it's kind of like we use triggers as kind of our new word these days.
Totally.
Everyone gets triggered. If you don't know what your triggers are, then you can't really step above yourself and look down and say, this is what's going on with this organism right now.
Totally. So, to step back from, I'm a pinball machine, just my triggers. But that's been really powerful for me to observe my thoughts. Any chance I get to get a micro space and go, oh, wow, I am stressing. Oh, my heart is beating. I was just learning that anxiety is not so bad if you just observe it. Wow, I'm freaking out right now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting human experience when you can watch what you're physically experiencing.
So cool.
Yeah.
So great.
When your heart is pounding and your breath's going up and you go my heart's pounding, and you're not just, it's not just happening, but you're watching it happen.
Definitely.
I think athletes can do that better because we pay so much attention to physical cues to kind of do what we're doing. But
we were taught. It's wonderful to have been taught to listen to your body. That's such a gift, and to not interpret it negatively. Yeah, that's the big thing as well. Okay, my heart's pounding. I must really my coaches were amazing. I had so many awesome humans contributing, and one coach would say this is just get the butterflies flying in formation, or if you can interpret stress as a positive, this is me getting ready instead of I am dying.
Yeah, that's and we have to let you go collect people, but that was an interesting. I forget who said it, but they were saying that you and I could both go on a roller coaster and you could be scared to death, and that could be the most exciting thing ever for me. And so and it goes to that storytelling and how we position things and how we acknowledge situations going on, both physically and emotionally in our lives. So
cool.
Yeah. But on that note, I know you got other stuff you want to do today.
This is what you want to do. Day, and it's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, It's been great to meet you, and hopefully we can do it again. There's probably 100 more things we should be talking about. But
come for a mountain bike ride out in the mountains. We'll get you back on the bike.
Yes.
And it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for the thoughtful exchange and all the ideas.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Greg.